Alright, so as I mentioned today, today's session is our basic class. What you're going to learn today is how to import data from Excel. We're also going to learn how to build a basic submission form. And we're going to learn how to build a basic searchable report. And eventually we're going to deploy that onto our website. So simple input, simple output, and deployment onto a website. I'm going to teach you how to modify the form so that you can see how to create multiple columns, how to create some rules and conditional logic, and of course how to manipulate some of the fields in order to fit that correctly within the website's content or however much space you have on the website. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. Hopefully by now everyone should know what the interface looks like inside Caspio. The first time that you log in, you'll be taken to the home screen. And on the home page is where you're going to be able to see the list of all of the applications that you've built as long as you have had your Caspio account. All right, and inside your account you can have as many applications as you want. These applications can be for different clients if you want to become a reseller of the Caspio platform. These applications can be for different departments. So if you have an app for a specific department in the organization, let's say for a marketing team or for a sales team or a support team, you can segregate the objects and all of the applications objects from one application to another. Okay? And it's very easy to begin building an application inside Caspio. All you have to do is click on this link here, New App. And when you click on that link, it's going to prompt a window on how you want to begin building this application. And there are two ways of how you can begin. There is no right or wrong answer here. If you begin this way by importing data, it basically lets you know that you can start building your application by importing some tables and data from either Excel, Access database, some kind of a comma delimited file, or an XML file. Okay? And if you begin this way, it basically speeds up the development of your tables. And once you bring the data in, you can build your forms and reports much quicker. If you decide to build your application from scratch, you can do so, of course. You're just going to have to build your tables from scratch directly inside Caspio. Even if you begin this way, you can always go to Tools and import data at a later time. Okay? So let's build our application by importing data. Let me show you my Excel file. Here's a very typical tabular format Excel file. We have a rows and columns. And this is the type of format that Caspio likes. All right, so when you're importing data, your very first row has to contain all the field names. And if you happen to have a space, just put an underscore or remove an underscore from your label in order to import that. Okay, and underneath our field names, we have all of our data entries. So let's quickly import this file into Caspio. We're going to click on the first button here to import data. On this screen, you're going to specify what the application's name is going to be. You're going to have your own naming convention. So if you're building, let's say, a CRM application, you're going to call it CRM. If you're building something pertaining to real estate, you're going to call it real estate app. Or let's say inventory management. So again, it all depends on the type of application that you're building. What we're going to build is something called 01 Manage Customer Projects. So if you attend all three sessions, today, which is the basic class, tomorrow, which is the intermediate, and the Thursday session, that's our advanced session, if you attend all three classes, you're going to learn how to build Manage Customer Projects. Okay, today is just the basics. Then tomorrow we'll piggyback on what we built today. And finally, the Thursday we'll piggyback on what we learned on the Wednesday session. Now, the reason why I put this prefix 01, if you look here on the left-hand side, all the applications are always going to be in alphabetical order. And if you put a number in front, it's always going to place that application at the very top. And for the purpose of our demo, we want to be able to see this application at the very top. So let's go ahead and attach that file. I have it on my desktop. It's called Customers. Hit Next. Okay, so what you're going to notice here in the background, Caspio is in the midst of creating that application container, and it's also in the midst of uploading that data file. All right, so we now have to go through 2 more screens before we finally import this data. So let's go to the first screen. And on the first screen, you'll see that I'm only importing 1 table. So why is it only showing 1 table? If you look at my Excel file, I only have 1 data sheet called customers. Now, if I had multiple data sheets here, let's say a total of 4, and I imported this file as a workbook file inside my Caspio account, I would be able to see a total of 4 tables here. And then you can pick and choose which table you want to import from that Excel file. All right, so you have that flexibility. If you don't want to import every single table, you can pick and choose which ones you only want to import. So I only have 1 table called customers. The second column, which is the action column, allows you to specify how you want to import this data into your Caspio account. The very first option, which is create new, if you've never imported this file inside your account, more than likely you're going to select create new because you're importing this data for the first time. So it's going to create a brand new database table inside your account. Now let's say that I imported this customer file a month ago, and today in my Excel file I made some changes to my data, and I would like to replace these changes with the file that I imported a month ago. So I will use the replace action. I would locate that table that I imported a month ago, and this newly imported table is going to replace an older table. Or you can replace any table for that matter. It doesn't have to be just the one that you had the data imported a month ago. You can replace any table of your choosing. Just select that table from this drop-down. Append allows you to attach specific entries to your existing table inside Caspio. And what I mean by that is, let's say in my Excel file, I decided to add 10 more customers. And I only want to append these 10 customers to my existing table inside Caspio. So I will select append, select my customer table, and those 10 new customers will append or attach to my existing table inside Caspio. Okay. We also have update. Now what update allows you to do is, let's say you're making specific changes to your data. So let's say I change Jennifer to maybe Ashley. Just one specific change, and I only want to update the changes that I made. So when you select update, Caspio is going to scan your entire Excel file, find the changes that you made, and replace those changes in your existing table inside Caspio. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And finally, we have update design. And what update design allows you to do is, let's say you were to introduce a new field called gender and maybe fax number. And you're only interested in attaching these 2 new columns to your table. So gender and fax number, I will select update design, select my customer table. And if I have new fields inside this table, they will be updated to my existing table if I select update design. The best way to learn all of these actions is by simply importing some data, trial and error, see how it affects your imported data. So play around with these actions until you see exactly the behavior that you get inside your Caspio account. That is the best way to learn. Okay? And a lot of these are actually interchangeable, so I could use replace over update, I could use update over append. So just play around with it until you get the feel for it. Okay? So I'm going to use the action called create new, and I'm going to give this destination object a name. We're going to call it TBL customer info. Now I like to use the prefix TBL, which stands for table. That's just something that I'm used to. Of course, you're going to have your own naming convention. And I also like to call my table customer info So depending on what information I have in the database or in that table, I usually like to give it some kind of a naming that pertains to whatever data I have. If I was importing a table that had project information, so project name, project description, start date, end date, I would probably call my table TBL_project info. Okay, so we'll call it customer info. We'll hit next. Now I do this on purpose. If you already have a table inside your account with the same name, you'll get an error message to let you know that you already have that same name inside your account. Therefore, you have to use a different naming convention. So what we're going to do, just simply maybe add one more underscore, hit next one more time, and now it allows me to proceed to the next screen. So this is the second screen before we finally import this file. And on the second screen, what you're going to notice as the first row here, you're going to see the original field names from the Excel file. You can scroll to the right to see the rest of the columns. The second row allows you to modify the field name to something else if you would like. So if you want to change the field name or the label, you can do so here. The third row allows us to include or exclude which column we wish to import. So if I don't want the phone number field to be imported into this table, I will just uncheck the box for the phone number field. And finally, we have data type. Each field should have a correct data type associated with that field. So if it's textual data, more than likely it's going to be either text 255 or text 64,000. If it's a checkbox type field, it's going to be a yes or no Boolean. If it's a date field, if you're collecting date information, it's probably going to be a date and time field. Now notice if I scroll all the way to the right, here's my date field. And Caspio is usually smart enough to recognize this for you automatically, so it'll convert those data types for you as soon as you import the data. But you'll see here that Caspio didn't recognize my date and time field as a date and time. It should have actually selected the date and time for me automatically. And the reason why it didn't do that is because in my Excel file, and I did this on purpose, this column, if I format the cell, you'll see that I left that as a general text field. Had I actually turned that into a date field with a date and time, then Caspio would have recognized that as a date and time field for me. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that from time to time, you might have to make some manual changes yourself. So just scroll to the left and right, verify each one of your fields, make the changes that you need to make, and then click on import. And don't worry, even if you miss a step here, you can always make these changes even after you import the data. So I'm going to leave this as a text 255 and click on import. Should only take a few seconds. All right, 629 records imported successfully. We're going to hit close. And as soon as I close the screen, it takes me inside that applications framework. Okay, now the way we get to this screen, if I go back to the home page where I see the list of all of our applications, here's the application that we started building called Manage Customer Projects. Let's go back inside the framework. When I click on Open, once again we're going to see that same screen. And you're also going to see this additional navigation menu on the left-hand side. And you're more than likely going to use most of these objects to construct this application called Manage Customer Projects. Okay, so this is our application name. These are the objects that we're going to need to build to construct this application. Now the very first object that's highlighted by default is the Overview tab. This screen is mostly informational for you to keep track of your progress. Okay, so I can add a note here to say today I imported 629 customers from Excel. Let's add another note to say tomorrow I need to build a form that allows me to add new customers. And you can see how the notes cascade one underneath the other. You can also attach screenshots. This is very helpful if you have, let's say, some kind of an illustration or a blueprint or a wireframe that helps you understand the schema of your application. You can attach those images here, and next time you come back to the overview screen, you'll be able to find all of your notes and all of your images. We can also edit the application details. So here we can put a nice description for what this application is supposed to do. And by the time we're done with our Thursday class, we're going to have an application. All right, so very simple application that's going to allow internal employees to view and manage customer projects. You can also change the application from here. And you can also add a small icon. I find this very helpful myself. If you have a simple icon that you can attach to this application and hit save, not only are you going to see that icon here, but if you go back to the home page, you're going to be able to find that icon right over here as well. And in a way, it helps you differentiate that application from all of your other applications that you have inside your account. Okay, once again, we're going to click on Open. This box, application parameters, we'll cover this in the Thursday class. This is a little bit more advanced, and we'll touch upon that in the Thursday session. Now, after you've added some notes inside your account on the overview object, the most important place where you want to begin is the tables object. The tables are the foundation of any application that you build inside your account. That's where all of your data is going to reside. And this is also where you're going to establish all of your table relationships. So if you have a one-to-many or many-to-many, you're going to link all of your tables here by using the relationship screen. And we'll talk more about this in the Wednesday and Thursday session. Okay, but remember, the tables are very important. That's where all the data is going to be stored, and they're really the foundation of any application that you build inside your account. In fact, you can't really do anything else with the other objects until you have at least one table inside the application. And we happen to have one table because we imported this from Excel. So here's my customer info table. If I open it, we're going to be able to see all of the data just like in our Excel file, except now this data that was once offline on my desktop is now sitting inside my online account in an online database. All right, and we can click on each cell to make modifications. If I wanted to make modifications to my fields, I can click on Table Design. And inside a Table Design screen, you have access to all of your fields. You can rename the field if you'd like. You can delete the field, or you can introduce a new field to your table. So say, for example, I wanted to add my gender field, and also maybe have the ability to attach an invoice. All right, and if it's an invoice, usually that comes in at a PDF format or a different type of format as an attachment. So instead of that data type being text 255 where we type textual data, I'm going to select file. And the file data type allows me to import and upload images or different file types inside the Caspio database. But what you'll notice here is we have a slew of options for data type fields. All right, and just to briefly touch upon these, numbers collect numbers. All right, that should be self-explanatory. Currency, if you'd like to build, let's say, an application that has currency, like for revenue, forecast, or pipeline, if you're building a CRM type application. File we just mentioned. If you wanted to have a list checkbox or a list that allows you to select more than one checkbox at a time, a list data type is a great option. Password, if you're building user tables, which we'll talk about in the Wednesday session, allows you to store credentials for each one of your employees. Timestamp, allow you to automatically stamp the date and time of each submission. We also have random IDs. All right, these are the unique keys that are assigned to each one of your records in the table. We'll talk a little bit about that today and also tomorrow and Thursday. And finally, we have a formula field. So if you wanted to store calculated data inside a table, Just to give you a simple example, let's say an order form, and you want to be able to select quantity times price, and you also want to be able to total that amount between the price and quantity. You can store that calculated entry inside a table. All right. So I'm going to select File, and once I add these two fields to my table and hit Save and go to the data sheet mode, we should be able to see those two newly created columns. Now they're blank because we just added these fields, so there really should be no data inside a table for those two columns. I can also reposition my field. So if I select my gender field, and let's say I want to move that up underneath my last name, hit Save. Once again, go back to data sheet mode, and I will be able to see that gender column moved right after my last name. Now we're not going to use this column in today's demo, so I'm just going to remove that field by clicking on the X icon, hitting on Save, and go back to data sheet mode just to verify, and then again we no longer see that gender field. Okay. Now when it comes to table design and when it comes to your fields and tables, I recommend that you write this down. Every single one of your tables that you build inside your applications should have a unique field. All right. If you look at one of your tables and you don't have a unique field, then you're not doing something correctly. So even if it's a lookup table or a user table or any table that you have, every table should have a unique key, because that unique key is going to identify each one of your entries inside a table. Okay, and in this example, what I'm going to do, if you look inside a data sheet mode, you'll see that every single customer has a different number. So it's that sequential increment of 1. So what I can do is I can turn this field into an auto number, and automatically Caspio is going to turn that field into a unique field. I'm going to hit Save. Go back to data sheet mode, and you'll see that every single entry in my table now that gets added to the table will have a unique identifier. All right, so let's go all the way down. I just want to show you an example. If I add a new entry inside my table, let's just say it's John Doe, you will see how John Doe becomes 630 inside my table. Again, it's just an assigned value to each one of your entries in the table, and later on, if I wanted to relate these customers to projects or customers to comments, I will be able to grab this value, the customer ID, and stamp that value inside a related table. All right. A unique key is also called a primary key, or a unique field is also called a primary key. All right. Once you have at least one table built, you can move on to the fun stuff, and all of the fun stuff actually happens in this object called DataPages. Don't be confused by this term DataPages. This is a Caspio term. Personally, I like to call them widgets, because once you build a data page or a widget, Caspio is going to give you a snippet of code, and all you have to do is copy and paste that code into your website in order to see these interfaces embed seamlessly into your web pages. And you're simply going to build these data pages on top of your tables. And here's how we do that. We're going to click on New here to launch Caspio's point-and-click data page wizard. And by looking at this navigation menu on the left-hand side, these are all the different things that you can build using our point-and-click interface. So if you wanted to build a submission form that adds data to your tables, you're going to select Submission Form. If you wanted to update an entry, a single entry inside your table, you're going to select Single Record Update. Password recovery is used if you want a user to automatically get an email sent to them to let them reset their password, so they don't have to contact an admin every single time they wanted to change their password. You have different options for reports. This is for outputting data. So if you wanted to view and manage data on the web, on the website, you will select from one of these options. We also have pivot tables, which are very helpful if you wanted to get more of an aggregate on your data, all right, which creates fields on the left-hand side and fields across the top. Just to put that in better perspective, let's say you have in your table, you have sales employee names. So on the left-hand side, I would like to list all of my sales employee names. On the top, I would like to list all the months or years. And in the middle, I would like to get the total for how much revenue each sales employee brought in for a given month. Okay, that's the idea behind the pivot table. Calendars are also useful if you wanted to build, let's say, a event management or some kind of an appointment tracking application. Allows you to see all of your appointments on a calendar. Charts are also very useful. I love using the charts because it simplifies my data. It lets me see more of a visual representation of what my data means. So if I am building pipelines and forecasts and revenues, I can build a simple pie chart or a line chart or a combination. Actually, if you scroll down here, you'll see a combination chart, which is also very helpful. It allows you to put a couple of charts on one chart. So definitely play around with these charts for your applications. And finally, we have HTML data page types. These are for more technical users. So if you are savvy with HTML and CSS, I recommend these data pages. But less than 10% of our overall customer base uses that data page type. Most applications can be built with these 4 tabs. All right, so let's build our first submission form. We're going to select this and hit next. And using this data source dropdown, this is how you're going to link your tables to whatever data page you're building. And when you see this tables in-app is referring to this application manage customer projects. And we only have one table that we imported from Excel. So I can only select one table. But notice that you have the ability to select other tables from other applications. Caspio allows you to share objects from one application to another. It's a much more effective way of building applications. Just to put it in perspective, let's say you have 2 applications. You have an application for your marketing team and you have an application for your sales team. 2 separate applications. But let's say that you wanted certain employees from the marketing team and certain employees from the sales team to be able to view data from the same table. So if I now build another application and I'm building a report, let's say report data page, not only can I select the tables that are in-app, but I can also find that table from the sales application if I want my marketing team to be able to see the same data. Okay, it's a very, very effective method of building applications by sharing objects from one application to another. So I only have one table, so we're going to select that. We're going to call this data page add new customer. And you also have a lot of different styles that you can choose from. The styles dropdown is all about the aesthetics, the look and feel of your form. If you want a certain color on the label, certain color on the field, certain background color behind the form, that's what we mean by aesthetics. Okay. Now I like the burgundy style myself, so I'm going to select that. Localization deals with regional settings. You can change the language of all of the Caspio text. So for example, the submit button or a search button or delete button, you can change that language to any one of the localizations that we give you that are in here by default, or you can create your own localization by going to this object. All right, it also deals with date regional settings. Like for example, here in the US, we have month, day, and year. Across Europe, they have day, month, year. So it'll just flip the day and month on the date field. So we'll stick with English. That's the default language. Access and security, we'll talk about this in tomorrow's training class. Okay, this deals with password protection. So let's hit next for now. And on this screen, it's basically asking me what fields do you wish to use in your submission form. So you can select one at a time, or you can click on the double arrow and that moves all the fields to the right. Now you'll notice that the customer ID, which is grayed out, you're not going to be able to move this to your submission form because it's an auto number. So it's automatically generated inside the table, so there is no need for that field to be inside the form. Let's hit next one more time. And once you get to the window that says configure its properties, On this screen, you can select each field on the left-hand side, and you can make modifications on the right side. All right. If you wish to see what the form looks like at this point, you can always click on Preview, and this will show you what the form looks like. Now, I'm usually blunt about this. There is no form on the web that you can show me that I cannot replicate inside Caspio. It really is that powerful when it comes to customization. Okay, so you can have multiple columns. You can change the color of your fields. You can put the labels on top of the fields. You can change out the buttons to something else. You can put a background image behind the form. You can add headings. You can do a CAPTCHA. Anything you can imagine, you can basically do inside the Caspio platform on the submission forms. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples because I can spend all day talking about just forms, but I'm going to give you just enough where you can customize your own forms and make it and polish them up for your own website. Let's say that you wanted to make the first and last name a required field. You will select this box for first name. You'll come down to last name and also require that as well. If I hit preview again, you'll now see this little asterisk next to your label. So if I try to submit the form without adding any info, it's going to come back as a required field. We can also, by selecting each field and selecting this drop-down, you're going to see a slew of options on how you can modify each one of your fields. Now, an email is usually associated with a text field, but if I were to change that to a text area and click on preview, you will see what that looks like. All right, doesn't look very good. So let's revert back to the text field. You can also make this field required if you like. We can do things like repeat for confirmation. So if I wanted to say, let's say confirm email, to make sure that the user puts the same email twice, hit preview again, and let's test that out. We'll just say a@a.com and b@bl.com, hit submit, and you will see what happens. By the way, all of this text that you're seeing, required and values do not match, you can change that text by going to the localizations object, and you can have it say whatever you want. Okay. For the state field, you'll see that it's a text field, right? And if you want all of your data to be uniform inside a table, because somebody can come over here and abbreviate New York as NY, and somebody can type it out as New York, and I would like all of my data to be uniform. So ideally what you want to do is create some kind of a static selection here, and typically a state field is commonly used as a drop-down. Okay. Now you have the option here to add your own custom values, so you can say maybe as the first option select state. Make sure you delete the value because you don't want this to be stored inside a table as a state. And then you will click on new, and let's say Nevada, maybe Hawaii, and maybe Texas. So I only have 3 states in my drop-down. If I hit preview, you'll be able to see that. Okay, now you're probably wondering, well, that's a very tedious process. If I have a lot of options in my drop-down, I don't want to have to spend all day inputting all of my options as custom values. And you are correct. So to remedy that, what you can do under source, you can select lookup table, and when you select this option, and let's say that you imported a file that contains all of your US states, well then you can simply just link your drop-down to that table that you imported. Okay, and I have a table of states inside my account, so what I can do here is just find that table really quickly. Here it is, states lookup. Okay, I'm going to select my state name for display and value. If I hit preview, you will now be able to see all of the states inside a dropdown. I didn't have to add them as custom values. But I also like to have at least one option here that says select state. And if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and select both custom values and lookup table. And under custom values, I will just simply say select state, delete the value, and have that default to every time a form is refreshed. My lookup table is still looking at that states table, so you'll see when I hit preview, this is the very first option, but when I select my dropdown, I see all of my other states. All right, for my date field, right now it's set up as a text field. All right, I can also, actually one thing that I forgot to do in my table was change the data type for the date field to date and time. So it's still listed as a text 255 in my table. So we're going to leave that date field alone for now. We'll come back to it later. If you have attachments on the submission form, you have up to 50 megabytes per file upload. That's the maximum size file that you can upload into the table. Okay. And usually what I like to do for a label, I will put some instructions here for the end user, and I will say max upload 50 megabytes. So when I hit preview, you will see what that looks like. Now, looking at this form, I'm not really too pleased with this gap that I'm seeing between my fields and my labels, because this label here is pushing out all of my fields. So I will grab this text, copy it, go back to my account, delete the label from here, but I will go to the Advanced tab for this invoice field, and using the hint text field, I will paste my text here, hit preview again, and you'll see now it creates this little question mark for me when I hover over. This text hint field is basically used to add more instructions to the end user. All right, let us move on. Now let's say that we wanted to put the first and last name and phone number field to be side by side in the same row. What you want to do is go back to the first name, and usually by default the standard tab is going to be selected. So just go to the Advanced tab once again, and you're going to find this checkbox, continue next element on the same line. And the next element is basically the next field over here on the left-hand side. So if you select this box, you're going to see this little comma for reference. It's basically letting you know that the next field will be on the same line. Now if I want to put the phone number field right after the last name, I will select last name and say continue next element on the same line. Hit preview again, and you'll see how those fields are now side by side. Okay, now personally I don't like the way this is designed. I'm going to usually position my labels on top of the fields. So it basically eliminates this gap between my fields. Let me show you what it looks like. So if I go back to the first name and say label position on top, last name label position on top, and phone number label position on top, hit preview again, you will see what that looks like. Okay, so now something that I want to teach you is when you're building your submission forms or any web form that you're building, always keep the labels in one direction. Okay, keep them uniform, either all the labels on top of the fields or all the labels to the left of the fields. If you start mixing and matching labels on top of the fields and labels to the left of the fields, like I have in this example, it becomes very difficult to customize the look and feel of the form. And it goes against web industry standard. Okay, it goes against best practice. And pay attention, next time you see a web form on the internet, you will see that all of the labels are either on top of the fields or to the left of the fields. Okay. Now, if I were to fully customize the look and feel of this form, let me show you how quickly I can do that. I'm going to put my email and confirmation email on the same line. So I'll select the email field and I'll say continue confirmation on the same line and label position on top. Hit preview. You'll see what that looks like. I want the address field to be by itself, and I want the city, state, and zip to be on the same line. So I will say address field, label on top. I don't want to continue the city field on the next line, so I'm going to select city field, label top, next element, label on top, next element, and for the zip code field, I just want label at top because I don't want the company name field to be on the same line as the zip code field. This will be by itself. I'm going to put the label on top, and actually I'm going to put the date and the invoice field side by side. So I will say continue next element, and for the invoice field, we'll just put the label on top. Let me see what the form looks like now. All right, a little bit cleaner. What I would actually do now is I would actually put the invoice field to be on its own line. So I'm going to go back to my form, select my date submitted field, and say I don't want the invoice field to be on the same line. Hit preview again. Okay, to me, that's better. Okay, but to each their own. Okay. Now for my address field, Usually when you're building a form, you kind of want to align that maybe with the field above it, so to give the user more room to type in the address. So select the address field, go back to the standard tab, and then you're going to find this option for field width. And you can measure the width in 3 different ways: characters, pixels, and percentage. So if I select pixels, and let's just say maybe 419, I think will be a good number. So let's preview. You'll see how the address field expanded, and just play around with a few more pixels to have it line up with your confirm email field above. My zip code field is probably not going to be that long, so let's just change 419 to maybe 425, and my zip code field can be in pixels as well to maybe 150. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's a little better. Just play around with it, trial and error until you get to the desired width of each one of your fields. Okay. Now the next thing that I want to teach you on the submission forms is how to actually create sections in your form so the user knows what part of the form they're on. Okay, it's very useful to know how to do this, and we do that by inserting what we call HTML blocks. And you can insert as many HTML blocks as you want. So by adding an HTML block, let's move the first one to the very top above the first name. And in here we can type in some text. We can say add personal info. I can highlight this text, and let's make it bold, italic, and let's make it a little bit bigger, maybe heading 3. Okay, I'm going to highlight this text. I will add one more HTML block and move that above my address field. Paste my text here and just make that a little bit bigger, heading 3. So all I did here was inserted 2 HTML blocks, one up here for adding personal info and one over here for adding address info. And then when you hit preview again, you'll see what that does to your submission form. It's a cleaner way to build forms. It basically allows you to now create a heading, all right, and grouping each one of your fields. Okay, and it's aesthetically, it's more pleasing to the eye when the end user sees something like this, instead of seeing all of your fields clustered together. The last thing that I want to cover on the submission forms is this Rules tab. Now the Rules tab allows us to create conditional logic throughout the form, and it's typically seen in surveys, or if you have, like, let's say a yes or no question that requires a yes or no answer, and if somebody says no, you can display a text area underneath that allows the user to input the text as to why they selected no in the prior answer. Okay, so you can show and hide fields, you can require fields, you can disable fields, and I'm going to show you a quick example. So if I go to the Rules tab and I create my first rule by clicking on this plus icon, rule number 1, let's set the criteria first. So we click on New here, and I'm going to set my criteria on the field name, and let's say the first name equals to Bob. If the first name equals to Bob, what action do you want to perform throughout the rest of your form? So we click on New here, and let's go ahead and hide the phone number field. You can hide as many fields as you want. Let's hide the email field. Let's go ahead and hide the address field, city field, state field, and zip field. So I'm hiding all of these fields. I'm also going to require my company name field, and I'm going to disable the date field, and I will go ahead and disable the invoice field. So let's preview the form once again. If first name equals to Tom, nothing happens. However, if it equals to Bob, I'm hiding a whole bunch of fields, and this field is now required. This field is disabled, and also my file field has been disabled. Okay, if you remove the letter, all of your fields will come back up. All right, I recommend that you play around with the Rules tab if you have a need for conditional logic. I also recommend, I'm not trying to promote our YouTube channel. I really do recommend that you subscribe if you want to learn how to use Caspio, because we release 2 videos per month. And there are a lot of helpful resources on the YouTube channel to help you learn how to use Caspio. And you'll find a video here for conditional forms. This is going to give you 4 different use cases of just how complex you can make these forms by using the Rules tab. Okay, very helpful video to watch this if you really have a need for that. Okay, if your application requires data normalization, one-to-many or many-to-many, I recommend this video series. You start here, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with database design, what we mean by one-to-many is, let's say you have one customer who has multiple projects. That is a one-to-many relationship. A single customer can have many projects. An example of a many-to-many can be, let's say, a PPO insurance, right? A doctor can see more than one patient, and a patient can be seen by more than one doctor. That is a many-to-many relationship. And if you have a need for something like that, then I definitely recommend that you watch this video, because it'll teach you how to create that inside Caspio. Okay? All right, let's go back here. And by looking at the preview screen, let's just say that you're really happy with the way the form looks. You love the design, you love the way the form looks. All you have to do is click on Finish to save your changes. And this is going to create your first data page. Okay. Now you can edit the form, you can preview again, or you can be able to click on this deploy link to publish this form to your website. You have to enable the form, and once you do that, Caspio is going to give you 5 different deployment methods. This is the most popular method, the embed model. All you have to do is copy this code, paste it into your site builder, publish your website, and you'll be able to see that form on your website seamlessly embedded. It's exactly like embedding a YouTube video or one of those Facebook like buttons. Copy, paste, embed. So let me show you how to embed this. I'm going to use Weebly. It's a simple drag and drop website builder. That's the one that I recommend. If you don't know how to build a website, it's super simple. Just drag and drop these widgets to your canvas to create your content on your website. Now, Caspio is compatible with a lot of website builders out there. If you're using GoDaddy or WordPress or Joomla, Yola, even your own internal system, you can embed these data pages. Okay. So I'm going to go to this page, Add New Customer, that I created on my Weebly website. I'm going to move over the embed code to the middle of my screen, and I'm just simply going to edit this box and paste my Caspio code, hit publish, and let's go to the web. I just accidentally closed my Weebly account, so I'll have to log back in. But anyway, when you go to Add New Customer, you are now going to see that form seamlessly embed into your website. So that's the idea. Okay, so you copy, paste, embed, and now whoever has access to this URL will be able to submit this form, and this data that gets submitted via this form, because the form is linked to our table, all of that data is going to be submitted into that customer info table. Let me show you an example. So let's go ahead and make one submission here. We'll say Mary Smith. None of my other fields are required. I'm just going to select Arizona as my state. Hit submit. All right, your submission was successful. And again, as I said, because this form is linked to my customer info table, and we go inside that table now, and we scroll all the way down, we're going to be able to find Mary's information inside the database. Okay. Let me just log into my Weebly account one more time. I accidentally logged myself out. Okay, so one thing that I want to mention here when it comes to deployment, this method here uses the embed model, which allows you to embed into your website. If you don't have a website, if you don't wish to use a website and you still want to access your application, you can use what we call direct URLs. If you copy this link and you paste the link in the URL address bar, let me just delete this folder because I want to show you how we do this. So here's my direct link. You can see how we're accessing the form using a direct link. Now this link is practically impossible to memorize. Okay, so what you want to do is simply bookmark it, save it to your browser, and then you'll find that link. So if you're, let's say you're browsing the web, you go to yahoo.com, and you want to add a new customer to your database, just click on that bookmarked link, and it's going to open up the form once again. What I'm going to show you next is, now that we know how to build this submission form and we know how to deploy the submission form, let's learn how to build a simple report. Okay, so we're going to build a new data page here. And this time I'm not going to be adding entries to my table. I'm going to be outputting the entries from my table. So I'm going to select my report data type. And let's go with the tabular format. Of course, you can select any other layout that you wish. This is the most popular one. It displays the data in rows and columns on the web. That's the one I'm going to select. If you look at the illustration below, this is basically what we're going to build. Search form, results page, and a details view. All right, so on this screen, just like the submission form, what table do you want to output the data from? Most of my data resides in the customer info table, so that's going to be my data source. We're going to call this data page View Manage Customers. I'm going to use the same style, burgundy, and again, we're going to bypass this today and click on Next. Now it's asking me, do I want to have a search interface on the website? Do I want to allow end users to have the ability to search? Yes, let's go ahead and select that radio button for now. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. Now it's asking me, what fields do you wish to use in the search form? So let's select a few fields here. You can have as many as you want, but for the interest of time, we're going to have just 4 search fields. Hit Next. Once again, you're going to come to a screen that says Configure its properties. Every time you see this, you're going to be able to select your fields on the left-hand side and make modifications on the right side. So now it's basically asking me, how do you want to modify your search fields? If I have my first name selected, and for comparison type it says equal, that means I have to know the exact first name that I'm searching for, down to a letter. But if I select contains, it's more like a partial keyword search. So if I type in letter A and click search, it's going to return all of the records that contain letter A. So we're going to just change this to contains for each one of our search fields just to speed up on time. We're going to hit Next. And now it's asking me, well, after you click search, what fields do you wish to use in the results page? And best practice, if you're using a tabular report, is to keep this from 7 to 10 fields or less, because there's only so much space we have on the computer screen. If you have too many columns and you see your columns stretch out across your computer screen, you might have to scroll left and right in order to see all of the columns, okay? Because the results page is really supposed to be the summary of your data. All right, just a quick glance at what your data looks like, and then you can drill down on each specific record by clicking on the details link. All right, so I'm going to include these fields, hit Next. This window allows you to make editing options. So do you want the end user to have the ability to edit data via the web? So be careful who you allow to be able to edit your data. All right, so I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is just the same warning message that I just told you. Just be careful who has the ability to edit the records. So I'm going to enable each one of these checkboxes just so that you can see what this looks like on the web. This is my results page. I don't need to make any changes here. You can if you want to. I'm going to keep that as is. This is my bulk edit screen. Because I enabled this checkbox here for bulk edit, this is now why I see this screen for bulk edit, which means that if I want to perform a mass update on my entries, I can say, well, I want to be able to change the first name, have that be a text field for me to type out a different name. But you can change that to a different form element if you like. And you'll see in just a minute what that looks like. On this screen is how many records do you want to show per page. In my table, I have 631 entries, or 631 customers. I want to show 25 at a time, but you can tab over to the next set of 25 customers. You can also enable sticky header row, which is also very helpful. Instead of me telling you what that does, I'll show it to you in just a few seconds here, okay? Do we want to have a details page for each record? Yes, let's go ahead and enable the details page. And finally, in the details view, I would like to include all of my fields. Hit next one more time. And by default, in the details view, you're going to see that every single field will be listed as display only. In other words, read only. But you can change that by modifying the form element. Okay, let's keep it as is and click Finish. And now we have two data pages built, one that allows me to input my customers and one that allows me to view and manage customers. So let's preview. Here is my search form. Here is my results page. And we can drill into details by clicking on this details icon to view the details of each specific entry. I can go back to results. Oh, sorry, go back to search. I need to change my localization. That really should say back to search. Now, when it comes to editing, because I enable grid edit, I can click on this link, and now I can modify each one of my records via the web, just like in Excel. I can perform a mass update. So if I select the first 5 records, and let's just say that I want the state to be New York, I will click on the edit link and change the state to New York, hit update, and you will see how that's going to be affecting your data set. And as I said, be careful who you give the ability to edit your data, because now that this is changed via the web in your table of customers, you will also now be able to see those changes in the database. Okay? Now it's very easy to disable all of these editing options. Okay, so for example, if I don't want the users to have this editing capability, I can edit this report, go back to that same screen that has all those checkboxes. All right, so I'm just going to disable everything, hit Finish. And you'll see how we no longer have any of that capability to do grid edit, mass update, delete. We can just go to details to view the details of a specific record. Okay. If you are happy with the look and feel of this data page, just like the submission form, you can now deploy this data page by enabling, grabbing the embed code. Let's go to my Weebly website, manage customers, drag over the embed code. And inside this window, we can paste our code, hit publish. And now we can tab back and forth. So I can search my entries via the web, okay, just like we were able to see in the preview mode. And I can add new customer to my database by going to this data page. Okay, so my website has 2 web pages, and all I've done is deployed 2 data pages in 2 different web pages. And now I'm just simply tabbing back and forth between my data pages. Now I could, if I don't want to put this on my website, I can deploy this once again, grab the URL code, just like the submission form, paste that, bookmark it, and now I can tab back and forth by clicking on my bookmarked links. So if you don't care about branding, if you don't care about any additional content on your website, you can easily bookmark these links, and to save space in your bookmark menu, you can create a folder, call it app, and you can just move these links inside that folder. And now by clicking on the folder, you have access to your application, so you can simply tab back and forth between these data pages depending on what you want to do.